interesting. We know this, of course, is the overseas 5x5 league in which a lot of WNBA players have already signed, including most notably Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever. And we've been sort of bracing, waiting for other signings to come out, and I don't know if there's been a reason we haven't heard any more signings. I don't know if that's got to do with...
Look at that reaction. He just realized the WNBA isn't playing around anymore. 50 to 54 games. That's not a proposal, that's a declaration. And what makes this particularly fascinating is the timing. Because while the league is trying to lock down a new CBA, there's another league creating scheduling chaos that nobody saw coming.
To me, this proposed potential overlap date is not nearly the most interesting thing in this article. The Women's Basketball League, calling itself Project B, has announced its first tour dates, and they could overlap with the WNBA calendar. The startup league, which plans for its inaugural season to begin in November and extend through April, said this week that its Tokyo tournament stop.
Project B just announced their Tokyo tournament runs March 26th through April 4th, 2027.
And here's where it gets messy.
The WNBA's proposed CBA includes training camp starting as early as mid-March. That's not a coincidence. That's a collision course. But the schedule overlap, that's actually the least interesting part of this story. What matters is what the league put in their official CBA proposal that nobody's been talking about until now.
For a new collective bargaining agreement. The union is still waiting for a response to a proposal they submitted close to Christmas, according to sources familiar with negotiations. That's hilarious. The owners still haven't responded. That's the biggest well, we're good. Well, it's not going to happen. We're not even entertaining that. In fact, we think your proposal's so trash that we didn't bother to respond. In that
the players' union submitted their proposal right before Christmas, asking for a $10.5 million salary cap and 30% of gross revenue. The owner's response? Radio silence. Complete radio silence for weeks. That's not negotiation, that's a power move, and it tells you exactly how the league views that proposal. They didn't even bother responding because they think it's that far out of bounds. But here's what the league did put on the table. $5 million salary cap, share of net revenue instead of gross. And this is the part that changes everything.
Why they think it's trash. In that proposal, players are seeking a salary cap of $10.5 million and roughly 30% share of the league's gross revenue. This proposal was in response to the leagues, which included a $5 million salary cap and a share of net revenue. Again, I think net revenue is fair. If you want to share after a profit is turned, it makes sense. Before it's turned, nah, forget it. That would be a breaking point for me too. This is where it gets very interesting. Among the league,
50 to 54 games. According to sources familiar with the negotiations, that's officially in the WNBA's CBA proposal. Not rumored, not speculated, actually on paper. They want to jump from 44 games straight to 50. Possibly 54 by the end of the deal, and if you've been paying attention, you saw this coming. They went from 40 to 44 games. The trajectory was obvious, but going straight to 50, that's aggressive. Think about what that means for Caitlin Clark's rookie season. If this gets finalized, we're not talking about 44 Fever games. We're talking about 50. 6 more games of the biggest draw in women's basketball. 6 more sellouts. 6 more primetime broadcasts. 6 more opportunities to break viewership records.
Most items was an expanded schedule. We have not heard about this, to my knowledge. I have not. I knew it was rumored, like before last year, etc., that eventually they would try to add on more games. This is where we officially see where it's at. The league has got it in their proposed CBA. According to a source familiar with negotiation, the WNBA is proposing an increase from 44 games to between 50 and 54 games in the new CBA.
Now here's where the NCAA tournament becomes a problem. The league wants training camp to start in mid-March. The Final Four happens the first weekend of April. You cannot have WNBA training camps conflicting with March Madness. That's where your talent comes from. That's your best advertising outside of Caitlin Clark games. Multiple league sources are expressing confusion about this proposed start date, and rightfully so. Under the current CBA, the league can start training camp as early as April 1st. They've never used that date because of the Final Four. But mid-March, that's a completely different level of conflict.
50 games, and what I'm guessing this is it would be 50 games for the first year of the CBA, and then the last year it would move up to 54 games. That's my gut feeling. I don't know that for a fact, okay? But that's my gut feeling, is the start of it would be 50 games, so they'd go from 44 to 50. Would that be this year? So if I'm reading this right, they could play 50 games this year under a new CBA.
Last year, training camp started April 27th, 2 weeks after the draft. That's the rhythm everyone's used to. But if the league gets this new timeline, we could see training camp starting a full 6 weeks earlier. And that creates fascinating dynamics with Project B, because now you've got WNBA players committed to a global 5-on-5 league that's touring through Tokyo at the exact moment the WNBA wants them in training camp. Kelsey Mitchell signed with Project B. Sophie Cunningham signed with Project B. Both Indiana Fever players, and those are just the names we know about. There's speculation that the Players Union has told others not to announce their signings yet, because optically, it looks terrible when you're in the middle of CBA negotiations demanding more money while simultaneously signing with competing leagues.
Now, you're talking about a matter of, let me just look once again. We're talking about the Tokyo stop being, so it'd be a conflict potentially of 3 games. My guess would be the WNBA would ignore that. That's my gut feeling. They would literally be like, okay, training camp's going to start April 6th now, and avoid Project B.
But here's the strategic calculation the WNBA might be making. Project B isn't the enemy. Project B is actually helping them. It's 5-on-5 basketball. It's touring globally. It's bringing larger audiences to women's basketball in markets the WNBA hasn't touched yet. Compare that to Unrivaled, which has literally become a punchline. 3-on-3 in a Miami facility that looks like a dugout. Project B is legitimate competition that might actually grow the pie. So if it's a matter of 3 days of overlap between the Tokyo tournament and training camp, maybe the WNBA adjusts. Maybe they start training camp April 6th instead of mid-March. Maybe they play nice with a league that's putting their best players in front of international audiences.
Play ball with Project B, except it's clear that a lot of the best talent in the WNBA may end up playing over there. So that's probably why you want to. There are certain areas where the league and another league could play nice, and if it's a matter of 3 days, why not figure it out? All right, because look,
Here's what makes this entire situation significant. We're watching the WNBA try to professionalize on multiple fronts simultaneously. They want more games, which means more revenue opportunities, but also more wear on players. They want an earlier start date, which conflicts with both college basketball and international leagues. They want to control the salary cap structure while players are exploring every possible income stream outside the league, and the owners still haven't responded to the players' Christmas proposal. That silence is deafening. Let's break down what's really happening here with the schedule expansion. 44 to 50 games is a 13% increase. If they go to 54, that's a 22% increase from current levels. The players want more money, and the league's response is essentially, fine, but you're going to work more for it. That's not unreasonable. the NBA plays 82 games. Even at 54 games, the WNBA is still playing 66% of an NBA schedule. But here's the complication. WNBA players have built their financial models around overseas seasons. They go to Europe, they go to Asia, they make significant money during the WNBA off-season. A longer WNBA season compresses that window. It makes it harder to fulfill international contracts. And now with Project B offering substantial money for short tournament appearances, the calendar is getting crowded. The proposed timeline has training camp in mid-March and finals ending in November. That's essentially an 8-month commitment when you factor in training camp, regular season, and playoffs. Compare that to the current model where training camp starts late April and finals end in October. You're adding a month on the front end and a month on the back end. That's 2 months less for international play. And this is where the players' union has legitimate concern. Because if you're compressing the overseas earning window while also offering a salary cap that's half of what players requested, the math doesn't work. $10.5 million cap versus $5 million cap is a massive gap. Gross revenue versus net revenue is a fundamental philosophical difference. The players want to share in revenue growth immediately. The owners want to share only after turning a profit. Neither side is wrong. They're just operating from completely different framework. The players look at the Caitlin Clark effect, the record viewership, the sold-out arenas, the new media deals, and they think we deserve a significant piece of this growth right now. The owners look at decades of losses, the infrastructure investments, the expansion costs, and they think we need to actually make money first before we share it. But back to the schedule conflict. Front Office Sports reported this, and the detail that jumped out is that multiple league sources are confused about the mid-March start date. Not opposed, confused, which suggests this might be a negotiating position rather than a firm demand. You propose something aggressive, you create room to compromise. Maybe the real target is early April, but you ask for mid-March so you can give ground during negotiations. The Project B Tokyo tournament is March 20. If the WNBA really wanted to avoid conflict, they'd start training camp April 7th. That gives players a day to travel back from Tokyo and jump right into camp. It's tight, but it's doable. And it shows good faith toward a league that's actually promoting 5-on-5 women's basketball to global audiences. Compare that to how the WNBA might view Unrivaled. That league is domestic, it's 3-on-3, it's during the WNBA offseason, but it's not growing the international footprint of women's basketball. Project B is in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. That's brand building on a scale that helps everyone. Now let's talk about what 54 games actually means for the product. Right now at 44 games, every game matters. Teams are fighting for playoff position from day one. 54 games, you've got more room for rest, more room for experimentation, more room for younger players to develop, but you've also got more wear and tear, more travel, more risk of injury. And WNBA players are already managing that risk across multiple leagues. The league's proposal reportedly has finals ending in November. That's significant because it pushes right up against international league start dates. European leagues typically begin in October. If WNBA finals are running into November, you're creating direct conflicts for players with overseas contracts. Unless the international leagues adjust their schedules, which seems unlikely. This is the chess match happening behind the scenes. The WNBA is trying to become the primary league, the main event, the place where players make the majority of their income. For that to work, they need to pay more and play more. But they can't pay dramatically more until they're consistently profitable. And they can't be consistently profitable without expanding the schedule and the season length. It's a circular problem. The players' union understands this. That's why they're asking for 30% of gross revenue instead of a fixed salary cap, tied to net revenue. They want to grow with the league. If Caitlin Clark drives a 50% increase in revenue, they want to see that reflected immediately in their paychecks. Not 3 years later, after accountants determine whether the league was profitable. And here's the thing about that Christmas proposal that got radio silence from the owners. It wasn't just about money. The players are also negotiating for better travel conditions, better facilities, better maternity benefits, better health coverage. The salary cap number gets all the attention, but the working conditions matter just as much. And a 54-game season, with mid-March training camp starts, puts additional pressure on all of those quality of life issues. So where does this end up? My gut feeling is they settle around 48 to 50 games for the first year of the new CBA, with a pathway to 54 games by the final year of the deal. Training camp probably starts early April, not mid-March, which avoids the NCAA tournament conflict and gives players time to finish Project B commitment. The salary cap probably lands somewhere between 6 and 8 million, not 5 and definitely not 10.5. And revenue sharing probably includes some hybrid of net and gross, with escalators tied to specific revenue targets. But none of that happens until the owners actually respond to the players' proposal. And the fact that they haven't responded yet tells you they're either still strategizing internally or they think the gap is so wide that there's no point in countering until the players come back with something more realistic. Either way, we're in a waiting game. And while we wait, Project B is signing players, Unrivaled is struggling for relevance, and the WNBA is trying to figure out how to build an 82-game league infrastructure on a 44-game budget. The expansion to 54 games isn't just about more basketball, it's about creating enough inventory to justify the media deals, enough games to satisfy the sponsors, enough content to keep fans engaged year-round. Because that's what this is really about. The WNBA wants to be a year-round conversation. Right now, the league exists for 6 months and then disappears. Players go overseas. Fans move on to other sports, and the momentum dies. A longer season means sustained visibility, sustained engagement, sustained revenue, but it only works if the players buy in. And right now, with the owners not even responding to their proposal, the players have zero incentive to compromise. So what do you think happens here? Do the players accept a longer season for moderate salary increases, or do they hold firm on the 30% gross revenue demand and force the owners to either pay up or risk a work stoppage? Because we're getting close to a point where this gets ugly. Training camp is supposed to start in a few months. If there's no CBA agreement, there's no season. And if there's no season, all that Caitlin Clark momentum evaporates. Drop your prediction in the comments. Are we getting 50 games this year, or are we getting a lockout?